Ultra-processed people. I saw this book in a bookstore recently and it caught my eye, so I bought it. We always hear that we should eat less processed food, but why exactly is that? What is it about ultra-processed foods that makes them bad for us? It was a very insightful book and I thought I might as well dive deep into this topic of ultra-processed foods, starting with why they make us fat. Stick around to the end for my practical tips for cutting down on ultra-processed foods. Over half of the calories in the average Westerner's diet come from ultra-processed food. The US and the UK are especially bad, with about 60% of our food being ultra-processed. Let's define ultra-processed food first. It's a bit hard to define, but generally it's an industrially made food that contains ingredients that you don't find in a typical home kitchen. Things like preservatives, emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners and colours and so on. They're usually mass-produced in a factory, they're cheap, and they're lacking in micronutrients and fibre. Really, I think we should be calling these things industrially produced edible substances or food-like substances, not food. Examples of ultra-processed foods are frozen pizzas, ready meals, store-bought cakes, instant noodles, chicken nuggets, packaged bread and soft drinks, but even things you might think are more healthy like flavoured yogurts, many breakfast cereals and protein bars. A lot of these things can be made at home with whole food ingredients, but the packaged stuff that you get in a grocery store or the food in most restaurants is usually not. There's usually quite a lot of processing that has happened to that food and a lot of additives. Ultra-processed food consumption is pretty well known to be correlated with obesity. If you look in the cupboard or the fridge of the most obese person you know, it's not going to be filled with fruit and vegetables, is it? People often make the argument that ultra-processed foods only make you fat because they're high in fat, sugar and salt and they're lacking fibre. And these things make the food hyper-palatable, super tasty, so people overeat, they get too many calories and they get fat. It's definitely true that these things make a food hyper-palatable, and ultra-processed foods are usually high in these ingredients. But can we pinpoint whether it's actually these things that's causing people to get obese from ultra-processed foods? Well, one very important study tested exactly that. One experimental group in this study ate a diet that was 80% whole foods, and the other group ate a diet that was 80% ultra-processed foods. And most importantly, the two diets were perfectly matched in terms of fat, sugar, salt and fibre. And the participants in both groups were allowed to eat as much as they wanted. They could absolutely stuff themselves with whatever food they had available, and they all had an enormous amount of food in front of them, more than they could ever eat, matched in total calories and all the other macronutrients, like I said. So which group do you think ate more calories and got fatter? If it was the fat, sugar, salt and low fibre that was causing the overeating, they should both eat exactly the same amount of calories, right? Because the foods available to them had the same amounts of those things, except they didn't eat the same amount. The people eating the ultra-processed foods had an average of 500 calories more every day compared to the whole foods group, and they gained weight accordingly. And the people in the whole foods group lost weight, even though they could stuff themselves with as much food as they wanted. Basically, there are some factors beyond fat, sugar and salt and low fibre and how good the food tasted that makes people overeat ultra-processed foods. So what is causing people to overeat these foods if it's not the fat, sugar, salt and lack of fibre? We have a few insights from this study. The ultra-processed food group ate their food faster, so these ultra-processed foods are often softer in texture, they don't need as much chewing, which means you can just get down a bunch of these foods really quickly. And eating quickly can outpace your body's satiety signals, so you can overeat calories before you start to feel full. It takes a little bit of time for your brain to register that your stomach is filling up with food. This is why skinny guys who want to gain weight are told to eat quickly before their brain realizes that the stomach is full. And overweight people benefit from slowing down their eating so that their brain gets those fullness signals before you've eaten too much. Ultra-processed foods usually have higher energy density, so they pack more calories into a smaller volume of food, which makes it much easier to eat more calories. Even if someone ate the same exact volume of whole food and ultra-processed food, the energy density of the ultra-processed stuff would probably mean that they get more calories, which can obviously lead to weight gain. Also, palatability, or how good the food tastes, is not just determined by fat, sugar and salt. Ultra-processed foods have flavor enhancers like MSG, they have textural enhancers like emulsifiers, there's artificial flavors, and all of this makes an unnaturally enjoyable mix of texture and taste that potentially overrides our natural appetite regulation. So they enhance palatability and how much you enjoy enjoy eating that food beyond what unprocessed foods are capable of. When was the last time you ate apples until you threw up, or steak? It's pretty hard to do that, but you can eat boxes and boxes of chocolates or bags of crisps. Some food additives, like certain emulsifiers, can alter the gut microbiome, leading to inflammation and leaky gut, which can contribute to metabolic disorders, including obesity. And it's not just the qualities of the food itself, but things like the convenience, the packaging, and the marketing. All of those can trigger habitual overeating of ultra-processed foods. It's very easy to overeat ultra-processed foods when you're in a distracted state, like you're watching TV or you're scrolling your phone, for example, just munching on a bag of cookies or whatever. I'd say it's easier to do that than to overeat a plate of steak and vegetables while you're distracted. Those kind of foods inherently demand more attention from you. The packaging and the marketing are very enticing. They use all the tricks to get you to buy and eat and keep eating, telling you that it's healthy because it contains like these added vitamins and minerals. It has 50% less sugar, low fat, heart healthy, etc. Really colourful and inviting packaging, especially targeted at children. Also, ultra-processed foods are of course cheaper. The reality is that the poorest people in the West eat the most ultra-processed foods, and they're also the most obese. Ultra-processed foods are cheap and easily available, and if you don't have the money for nice organic eggs and steak and vegetables, or even for normal average quality whole foods, then you go for the cheaper options, which are usually the packaged ultra-processed stuff. So if you're overweight or your diet contains a lot of ultra-processed foods and you want to cut down and transition to a more whole foods based diet, here is my practical advice for you. Learn how to cook first of all, if you can't yet. Start with a few basic meals like an omelette, meat and potatoes with some vegetables, basic pasta dishes, ground beef and rice. You don't need to try and come up with recipes yourself. Just search for basic recipe ideas on the internet and try them out. And when you find one that you like, you can add it to your recipe collection. Even if they're not like the healthiest home cooked meals, it's probably better than packaged microwavable ready meals or takeaways. When I first started cooking for myself, I made the most basic, boring meals and I was so proud of them. I was absolutely clueless about cooking, but after years of experimenting, finding new recipes and learning a lot about nutrition, I've got a big list of healthy recipes that I can make that I really enjoy eating. And that's important. You want these meals to be really tasty. Use as much spice and herbs as you want. Use some oil or fat in cooking, but don't go crazy. Mix up the texture sometimes, a little crunchy or nice and creamy. You really want these meals to be enjoyable so that you can stick to making them and eating them frequently. Ultra-processed foods are very convenient. Usually you can just chuck them in the oven or in the microwave. So if time is an issue for you, you can batch cook your meals and meal prep. This is a real lifesaver. I don't like spending a whole bunch of time cooking when I'd rather be working or doing something else. And being able to just heat up a healthy meal that I've already made from home in the microwave in a few minutes is great. You can use a slow cooker, which does most of the work for you after a little bit of prep. You don't need to cook super elaborate meals, just simple stuff in 1 or 2 pots or pans will work. And eat some raw whole foods like fruit and nuts, things that you don't have to spend any time cooking. A lot of people eat ultra-processed foods when they're bored or stressed, so you need a strategy for that situation. Wait for 10 minutes after you get the urge, if you can, and hydrate yourself with some water or herbal tea in that time. Distract yourself if you can, like watching funny videos on your phone. Your body wants some comfort in that moment of stress. Food is very effective at providing that, but you can get it from other sources as well. Then if you really have to eat something, things like nuts or fruit or dark chocolate can help if you want something to nibble on. Apple slices with peanut butter on top are one of my favorites. And of course, if possible, address the cause of the stress itself. I know that's easier said than done. And related to snacking, try to keep yourself pretty full so you don't snack on ultra-processed foods in between meals. You need to get plenty of protein in each meal. Protein is very satiating. It fills you up nicely. And without protein, chances are that you'll get hungry again pretty quickly. And fiber as well has that same effect. And if you really have to snack, again, things like nuts and fruit can be a good choice. If price is an issue for you, go for the cheaper stuff. Buy things in bulk, especially like rice, oats, lentils and beans. Get frozen vegetables and fruit. These are usually cheaper. Buy in-season food. If some exotic fruit has to be shipped over from another continent, it's going to be more expensive. Local and seasonal stuff will be cheaper because it's abundantly available, like right nearby. There's less transportation costs. And cheap meats like ground beef, canned fish, chicken thighs, you can do alright on a budget. You don't need to switch to 100% whole foods right now. You can gradually make that shift, swapping out individual parts of your diet. And almost no one has a perfect 100% whole foods diet anyway, so don't feel bad if you never achieve that stage. Hopefully these tips help you cut down on ultra processed foods, because this stuff is really quite nasty, and the more you learn about it, the more disgusted you'll become by it. If you want more research-backed health and fitness strategies like this, I send exclusive content to my email list every week, stuff that doesn't make it into my videos. Click the link in the description and sign up now. Thank you for watching. Share this video with someone who will find it useful, and I'll see you next time.